in the quiet, forgotten hills of eastern Kentucky, where the morning fog still covers the valleys like a blanket. There is a strange and true story that has confused experts for almost 200 years. In the year 1834, a preacher named Reverend Ezekiel Morrison came to the small town of Pine Hollow. He brought his 2 daughters with him, twin girls named Rebecca and Rachel, who were only 9 years old. Pine Hollow was so hidden and far away that many maps at the time didn't even show it. It was a lonely place deep in the woods, where life moved slowly and secrets stayed buried. Nestled between thick woods and steep ridges, Pine Hollow was a place the world had forgotten. The roads were made of dirt, and the only sounds came from birds, distant wolves, and the whisper of wind moving through trees that were older than memory. The people who lived there were simple folk, farmers, blacksmiths, and widows, bound together by tradition, faith, and silence. When Reverend Morrison arrived with his wagon and wide-brimmed hat, the town watched quietly from behind their windows. But it wasn't the preacher they whispered about. It was the girls. Rebecca and Rachel looked exactly alike. 2 small shadows with pale skin, curly red hair, and eyes like glass marbles that reflected more than they revealed. They never spoke unless spoken to. And when they did, their voices were soft too soft. They moved together, turned their heads at the same time, blinked at the same moment. And when one reached for something, the other's hand twitched like she felt it too. To strangers, they were merely odd. But in a place like Pine Hollow, where old superstitions ran deeper than the roots of its trees, odd was dangerous. The congregation welcomed Ezekiel with quiet politeness. They helped him settle into the old parsonage by the creek, a small wooden house surrounded by thin trees and dark soil. It had been empty since the last preacher died mysteriously in his sleep. No one liked to speak of it, and no one stayed too long that day. As the townsfolk left the Morrison family at their new home, some made the sign of the cross. Others whispered prayers under their breath. Within a week, the hollow began to change. At first, it was barely noticed. A rooster crowed at midnight. Milk soured faster. Dogs howled at things no one could see. But it was the children who noticed first. They avoided the twins, said they talked to each other without speaking, claimed that when one scraped her knee, the other cried across town, without knowing why. The adults brushed it off. Just children being children, they said. But behind closed doors, people began to worry. Something about those girls felt wrong. Not evil, not yet, but unnatural. One foggy morning, an old farmer claimed he saw one of the girls standing by the river, motionless, staring into the water. He called out to her, but she didn't respond. When he stepped closer, she was gone, just vanished. That same day, her father said both girls had been inside, helping him stack books. He was certain they hadn't left the house. Others began seeing them, too. Twins standing still in the woods, watching. Always watching. Sometimes they were barefoot in the snow. Other times, they stood beside animals that didn't run away. A fox, a buck, a black dog with golden eyes. All quiet, all still. Ezekiel ignored the rumors. He preached every Sunday with fire in his voice and hope in his eyes. He believed in God's plan, even when it was hard to see. But deep inside, even he started to wonder. He would wake in the night and find one of the girls staring out the window, or both standing at the foot of his bed, saying nothing, just staring. One night he dreamt of fire, his church burning, the bell tower melting, and the twins walking calmly through the flames. He woke in a sweat, his hands shaking. From then on, he began to write everything down. Every dream, every strange noise, every odd word the girls said. In one entry he wrote, "They speak less, but I hear them more. I think not all voices come from mouths." Winter was coming. The nights grew longer, and the whispering in Pine Hollow was no longer just gossip. It was fear, and it was only the beginning. As the days grew shorter and the snow began to fall in soft, silent sheets, Pine Hollow seemed to tighten its grip on silence. The people spoke less. Doors were kept locked, even in daylight. Children were not allowed to wander far, especially not near the creek or the tree line, where the forest was thick and dark. The woods had always felt strange, but now they felt alive, watching. And at the center of it all were the twins. One afternoon, Miss Hattie, the schoolteacher, decided to test the girls. She believed in reason, not rumors. She sat Rebecca and Rachel in front of her class and handed each of them a different book. "Read aloud," she said. Rebecca opened hers and began reading softly. But Rachel didn't move her lips. She sat perfectly still. Yet, somehow, the words came out of her mouth too. The same words at the same time. Some children screamed. One fainted. Hattie dropped her chalk. When asked how they did it, the girls simply smiled. "We don't know," Rachel said. "We just feel it," said Rebecca. The next day school was closed. The town called it weather concerns, but everyone knew why. That week, something darker arrived. On a cold December evening just after sundown, Tommy Cooper, a 10-year-old boy known for sneaking off to explore the hills, disappeared. He had told his friend that he was going to Devil's Elbow, a crooked rock formation past the church where the trees grew twisted and the birds never sang. Tommy never came back. His friend, a boy named Eli, returned to town trembling. He claimed he had seen one of the twins standing at the rocks, her eyes glowing like silver coins in the dark. "She didn't say anything," Eli cried. "She just looked at me like she knew I wouldn't come back if I stepped forward." But Eli had turned and run. Tommy hadn't. A search party went out that night. They found no trace of the boy. No coat, no footprints, not even broken branches. Just still air, deep woods, and by the rocks, a single child-sized handprint pressed into frozen mud. The town changed after that. Church pews stood empty on Sundays. The blacksmith moved his family out of the hollow. People stopped answering their doors after sunset. And the Morrison family was left alone, almost completely. Ezekiel tried to keep his faith strong, but he was breaking inside. At night he would sit by the fireplace and read from his Bible. But the words no longer comforted him. He began hearing whispers behind him, soft, cold voices that stopped when he turned around. He saw shapes in the shadows of his study. Some nights, he woke with the feeling of someone standing over him, though the room was empty. And then there were the twins. They no longer acted like children. They never fought, never cried. They didn't play with dolls or hum songs like other girls. Instead, they sat quietly, side by side, often staring at the same corner of the room for hours. Ezekiel began to write down what he saw. His journals became scattered with notes, like warnings to himself. "I fear they see something I don't, something I cannot name." Rachel asked me today if souls can split. I don't know why she would ask that. Rebecca told me I will not live to see spring. She smiled as she said it. The Reverend tried to fast and pray. He poured holy water at the door. He placed crosses on the girls' bedroom walls. But nothing changed. In fact, it seemed to make things worse. One morning, he found all the crosses turned upside down. Another day, he discovered his journal open, its pages torn, the words scratched out in red crayon. The twins said they didn't touch it. And then came the dreams. Not just Ezekiel's, but the town's. People began reporting the same night terrors. They saw a burning church, the sound of bells tolling backward, two girls walking through the fire unharmed. Their eyes were black as coal. Their hands reached out, not to help, but to take. One man claimed he woke with scratches on his chest. A woman miscarried in her sleep after dreaming that the girls were touching her belly. Another wandered into the snow and was never found. Each dream featured the twins. Each dream ended with a whisper. The hollow remembers. That phrase began appearing everywhere. Carved into trees. Scratched onto windows. Written in ash across a barn wall. Ezekiel tried to speak to the girls. To demand answers. "Do you know what's happening?" he asked one night, his voice shaking. Rachel looked up from her chair. "Yes." Rebecca didn't even blink. "It's almost over." "What is almost over?" Ezekiel cried. Rachel looked into the fire. The forgetting. The hollow forgets until it doesn't. Ezekiel locked himself in his study that night and didn't come out until morning. His final journal entry that day read, "I fear I brought them here, but they are not mine. They never were." That night, the old church caught fire. The flames rose high into the cold sky, lighting up the entire hollow. People came running, tried to put it out, but it would burn too fast, too hot. It was gone within minutes. Everything turned to ash, except the pulpit. It stood untouched, blackened but whole, and sitting on top of it were two identical dolls, made of corn husks and twine. No one claimed to have made them. No one ever saw them before. The next morning, The town met at the edge of the woods. They were done being afraid. Ezekiel Morrison was told to leave Pine Hollow by sunset. Him and his daughters. There would be no more warnings. The Reverend said nothing. He packed what he could into a wooden cart and told the twins they were leaving. Rachel nodded once. Rebecca held a dead bird in her hands and said, "We're already gone." Ezekiel didn't understand. That night, the wagon stood outside the parsonage, covered in frost. The twins were inside, sitting quietly. But Ezekiel was gone, vanished. No footsteps in the snow. No broken door. No body. Only his Bible left open on the table. To a verse from the book of Job. "The thing I greatly feared has come upon me, and what I dreaded has happened to me." And in the silence that followed, Pine Hollow held its breath, waiting, watching, and listening for whispers. The morning after Reverend Ezekiel Morrison disappeared, a thick fog rolled over Pine Hollow. It came early, just before sunrise, heavier than usual, thick like smoke, and it did not lift for 3 days. People said it smelled strange, like ash and damp earth, like something buried had been disturbed. Inside the Morrison home, the twins sat at the table, untouched by panic. Rebecca was braiding Rachel's hair as if nothing had happened. They did not ask for their father. They did not cry. When the townspeople came to question them, the girls only said, "He's not here anymore." The sheriff rode in from the next county over. He was a tall man with a serious face, not easily frightened. He searched the parsonage and the woods. No footprints, no signs of a struggle. The bed was neatly made. The fire had burned out, and the Bible was still open, untouched since the night before. His horse refused to go near the church ruins. When he questioned the girls, they gave him quiet stares and polite smiles. "Do you know where your father went?" he asked. Rebecca answered, "He went into the hollow." Rachel added, "He heard a calling." The sheriff frowned. "What's the hollow?" The girls said together, "It's older than here." That was enough for him. He closed his notebook and left town the same day. Without a pastor, the church remained a charred ruin. No one dared rebuild it. The ground was left bare, like a wound that wouldn't close. But strange things began to happen there. Wild animals gathered in the ashes, foxes, crows, even a black bear once. They did not growl or bite. They just stood still, watching the burned earth. And the dreams continued. Night after night, people in Pine Hollow saw the same things when they closed their eyes. A woman with a veil walking backwards. Trees that whispered in voices that sounded like children. 2 girls holding hands, standing at the edge of a hole that never ended. The dreams always ended the same way, with silence, then a single whisper. The hollow remembers. A sense of fear spread slowly through the town like sickness. People moved more quietly. Doors were locked earlier. Crosses appeared above every doorway. Some families packed up and left in the middle of the night. Wagons rolling out with no goodbye. But the twins stayed, and they never aged. Seasons passed, but Rebecca and Rachel still looked 9 years old. They wore the same clothes. Their shoes never tore. Their hair never grew. Some said time didn't touch them. Others believed time was afraid to. Mrs. Hargrave, the midwife, said she saw the girls walk barefoot across a frozen pond, without cracking the ice. Mr. Dill, the gravedigger, claimed he heard the twins laughing from inside a sealed coffin. When he opened it, it was empty. Every strange thing in Pine Hollow was traced back to them, and yet they never broke any laws. They never harmed anyone directly. They were just there. One day, a traveling priest named Father Ansel from Virginia arrived in town. He had heard stories, whispers from traders and Old Hill folk. He came with holy water, crucifixes, and a book older than the Bible. He said he came to see the girls. They welcomed him. Father Ansel met them at the burned church, where they were already waiting. He offered them blessings. He tried Latin chants. He circled them with salt. The twins simply smiled. "You believe too much in your tools," Rachel told him. Rebecca added, "This place doesn't speak Latin." Father Ansel stayed one night. The next morning, he was gone. His books and bags were still in his room. His horse was still tied outside, but the priest had vanished. Some said they saw him walking toward the woods in the dark, barefoot, whispering. Others said they heard screaming from the direction of Devil's Elbow just before dawn. His silver cross was found hanging from the church's old bell hook. After that, No one came to Pine Hollow without reason, and no one stayed longer than they had to. By now, even the children who once avoided the twins had grown. The town changed. Families came and went. Crops were planted and harvested. The war passed and left its scars. But the twins remained, never older, never gone. A generation later, in 1872, a group of researchers from Louisville arrived. They were part of a new Society for the Study of the Unexplained. Men in coats with ink-stained fingers and skeptical eyes. They came to collect facts, records, stories. They did not believe in curses or spirits. They believed in science. Until they met the girls. They tried to test them, asked them puzzles, gave them psychological exams, measured their movements. Nothing made sense. Their heartbeats were too slow. Their temperatures didn't change. Their fingerprints were identical exactly, down to the smallest swirl. Their answers were always the same, even when separated. When asked how they always knew the same thing, the girls answered, "Because we're not two. We're just one," Rachel said. "In two bodies," said Rebecca. The scientists didn't laugh. They didn't even speak. They packed their equipment and left the next morning. Their final report read only, "Pine Hollow, further study not advised." The townspeople tried to carry on, but the land no longer felt safe. Children were born sick. Crops withered in places where the girls walked. The river flooded without rain. Cows were found turned in circles, eyes wide, tongues gone. One by one, the old families moved away. The town's edges shrank. The school closed. The general store was boarded up. Only a few stubborn souls stayed behind, claiming it was their home and always would be. But they kept their windows closed, and they did not speak the twins' names. By 1900, only a few dozen people lived in Pine Hollow, but the girls were still there, looking the same, dressed the same, smiling the same. Some said they no longer ate. Others claimed they didn't sleep. One man swore he saw them standing in the graveyard during a thunderstorm holding hands, their dresses blowing in the wind, even though the trees around them were still. When asked why they never left Pine Hollow, Rebecca answered, "We're not allowed." Rachel added, "The hollow holds us." And then she whispered something no one forgot. "But it won't just hold us forever." By 1920 ***, Pine Hollow was little more than a forgotten name on an old map. The train lines never reached that deep into the hills, and the roads had crumbled into forest. What few families remained lived in silence, passing down quiet warnings to their children. Don't go near the creek. Don't look at the twins too long. Don't speak of the hollow after dark. The post stopped coming. Doctors wouldn't visit. Even the county forgot them. And yet the girls remained. Rebecca and Rachel still lived in the same worn cottage near the old parsonage. The wood had rotted. The windows were cracked. But the girls, now nearly 90 years since they first arrived, still looked 9 years old. Their dresses were clean, though no one saw them wash. Their hair was always neat, though no one saw them brush. Their eyes were the same, cold, distant, too ancient for children. Some believed they were ghosts. Others thought they were witches. But most agreed, whatever they were not human anymore. One cold spring morning, a boy named Jonah Harper dared to visit their home. He was only 12, bold and foolish. His grandmother had warned him, told him how her own mother had seen the twins as a child and never recovered. But Jonah didn't believe in old stories. He knocked on their door. Rachel answered. "Come in," she said, though he had not said his name. The house smelled like dried roses and ash. There were no lamps, no fire, and yet it was warm inside. Rebecca sat at the table, calmly tying a string around a small carved wooden doll. "Do you want to see something?" Rachel asked. Jonah nodded. The girls brought him into a back room. There was nothing there but a mirror, tall, dusty, framed in black iron vines. They told him to look into it. At first, he only saw himself, but then his reflection began to move on its own. It blinked when he didn't. It frowned when he smiled, and then it grinned at him, with teeth that were not his. Jonah ran out screaming. He wouldn't speak for weeks. When he finally did, all he said was, "They showed me what I'll be." After that, no one went near the cottage again. The return of the stranger. In 1953, a man named Dr. Calvin Reeves, a professor of folklore from Chicago, arrived in town. He had read an old newspaper clipping from 1872 that mentioned the eternal twins of Pine Hollow and became obsessed. He believed there was a rational explanation. He brought with him cameras, notebooks, and a tape recorder. He found the town nearly abandoned. Only a handful of people still lived there, most of them old and quiet. They refused to speak to him, but the twins welcomed him. He recorded hours of interviews with them. Their voices were gentle, soft as wind. When asked how they had lived so long, Rebecca said, "We don't live. We remain." Rachel added, "We were never made like the others." Dr. Reeves asked about their father. Rachel simply said, "He was not strong enough." And Rebecca whispered, "He broke when he saw what was underneath." That night, Dr. Reeves heard knocking on his cabin door. He opened it, no one there. Only a small bundle of twine and bone left on the step. He burned it in the fire. The next morning he found the same bundle, perfectly remade, lying on his pillow. He left Pine Hollow without saying goodbye. His journals were mailed back to the university, but he never returned. 3 years later, he was found dead in his office, having scratched out his own eyes. His final note was only 2 words. They wait. The ritual and the rain. In 1971, the biggest flood in Kentucky's history washed through the valleys. Rivers overflowed. Houses vanished. Roads crumbled. But somehow, Pine Hollow remained untouched. Not a single home was lost. Except one. A small shed behind the twins' cottage collapsed in the rain. After the storm, townsfolk who still lived nearby said they saw the girls dragging something heavy into the woods. It was wrapped in linen. It bled through. They buried it beneath the old church ruins. No one dared to ask what or who it was. Later that year, a local hunter named Carl Jensen followed deer tracks too deep into the forest and didn't return. When a search party went looking, they found his body beside Devil's Elbow. His face was pale, eyes wide, mouth open in a scream. But no marks on his skin, and carved into the stone beside him were the words, "The Hollow remembers. They speak in silence." In the 1990s, Pine Hollow became a ghost town. Only 2 homes still had lights. The Dawson Place, where a blind widow lived with her cats, and the Morrison cottage, still exactly as it had always been. Tourists came now and then. Young thrill seekers, paranormal bloggers, ghost hunters. Most left disappointed. The twins rarely showed themselves, but the ones they did speak to never talked again. One woman, in 1998, walked out of their home barefoot and smiling. Her teeth had been removed. All of them. No blood. Just empty gums and a peaceful look in her eyes. A man in 2003 left his camera behind. The footage showed the twins sitting across from him, not speaking. But when he asked a question, their voices came from the walls. Not loud, not angry, just wrong. The final 10 seconds of the video, static. Then a whisper. "Do you want to stay?" 1 town, 2 shadows. Endless time. By 2010, most believed Pine Hollow was a myth, an urban legend. Locals in nearby towns denied it ever existed. Maps removed its name, but satellite images still show the cottage, still standing, still with smoke from a chimney. The last known visitor was in 2016, a woman named Margaret Ellery, a descendant of Ezekiel Morrison. She came with old letters and family papers. She said she just wanted to meet them. She stayed one night. When a park ranger passed through 3 weeks later, he found her car still there. Inside the house, everything was untouched, except for a new portrait hanging above the fireplace. It showed 3 girls, all smiling, all the same age, all holding hands. The ranger ran. To this day, no one has entered again, and still the twins remain, waiting, smiling, and the hollow still remembers. In modern times, when the world moves fast and people believe in science, few remember places like Pine Hollow. But there are still stories, whispers passed from one mouth to another, often spoken by the oldest voices in forgotten towns. Stories of 2 girls who do not grow, of a house that does not age, and of a valley that refuses to die. The investigator who vanished. In 2019, a young documentary filmmaker named Simon Wexler decided to make a short film on Appalachian legends. He had heard of the immortal twins of Pine Hollow from an online forum filled with conspiracy theories and creepy folklore. He thought it would make great content, ghosts, myths, a remote town, the perfect viral story. Simon had experience filming in harsh places. He wasn't scared. He took a drone for cameras, solar packs, and a friend to help him. Her name was Jenna Bell, a skeptic who tagged along to prove it's all a hoax. They drove deep into the Kentucky hills and reached what remained of Pine Hollow. The GPS went dark 2 hours before arrival. Cell service vanished. And the deeper they drove, the more the landscape changed. The trees seemed older. The sky grew heavier. The wind sounded like voices. They parked near the church ruins. And that's when they saw it, the cottage, still standing, chimney smoking, though it had never been connected to gas or electricity. Simon turned to Jenna and smiled. "We're about to make history." Footage left behind. The footage recovered from their trip, what little is found, was discovered weeks later. A local hiker found their car abandoned, with a trunk popped open and camera bags scattered. The memory cards were intact, but the last 10 minutes were corrupted. From what could be viewed, the film showed the twins greeting Simon and Jenna at the door. They were polite, friendly even. Their voices were gentle, their clothes simple. Simon asked how they had lived so long. Rachel said, "We were born from something old." Rebecca added, "We are not from a place. We are from a time. Before your clocks. Before your names." Jenna laughed. That's when the camera glitched. The twins turned to Jenna, and in perfect unison said, "You shouldn't have laughed." Jenna's scream was the last clear sound on the tape. After that, only static. But in the very last frame, when paused carefully, you can see a third figure now standing behind the twins. A girl. Same size. Same smile. Jenna. Smiling wide, with black eyes and a cracked porcelain face. The book that shouldn't exist. A month after their disappearance, a strange book appeared at a used bookstore in Cincinnati. The spine was stitched in what looked like animal leather. The title, The Hollow Remembers. No publisher. No author. Inside were journal entries written in different handwritings. Some dated as early as 1834, others marked with modern timestamps. Pages described ritual shadows that moved by themselves and whispers heard from inside mirrors. One entry said, "The girl showed me a door. It opened to something that was breathing. I felt it. I still feel it." Another said, "Time does not pass here. It watches. It waits. It sways like trees, but it is not kind." The final page only had one sentence. "She will be the third." When a librarian from a University of Kentucky came to examine the book, it had vanished from the shelf. A letter from the past. In 2021, a sealed letter was discovered in a trunk at an estate auction in Vermont. It was written by Reverend Ezekiel Morrison, addressed to any man of God who may read this after I am gone. It read, "I was a man of great faith. I believed the Lord sent all things with purpose. But my daughters are not gifts. They were not born. They were given, or perhaps traded. I heard the crying deep in the woods, and I followed. I should not have. What I carried back was not mine. And now they do not sleep. They do not age. They do not forget. I pray no one opens the door beneath the church ruins. The thing that sleeps there feeds on memory and light. Burn this letter. Burn it now, and do not go to Pine Hollow." The letter was verified. The ink was iron gall, typical of the 1800s. The handwriting matched other records from Morrison's church. But who sealed it? And why did it arrive now? The final visitor. In 2024, a storm chaser named Eliza Grant posted a TikTok about finding an unmapped village in Kentucky while avoiding a tornado path. The short video showed the edge of Pine Hollow, with two girls in the distance, standing still. Eliza didn't say their names, but her caption read, "They watched me for 45 minutes. They didn't blink." She never posted again. Her account was deleted. Not by her. Not by anyone who admitted to it. Her last recorded GPS location? Just a few hundred feet from the old Baptist church. Authorities searched for her. No signs. No footprints. No equipment. Only a small wooden doll tied with twine, found nailed to a tree with her name carved into it. Conclusion: the hollow remains. Today, if you search Pine Hollow on Google Maps, nothing comes up. But locals say the land is still there. Just hidden. Not gone. People still vanish in the surrounding counties. Sometimes hunters. Sometimes travelers. Always alone. And sometimes, just before they disappear, someone reports seeing two little girls in white dresses standing hand in hand, just at the edge of the trees. They don't speak. They don't wave. They just wait. And if you get too close, you might hear something strange. Laughter, whispers, and the sound of a mirror cracking. No one knows what Rebecca and Rachel are. Not angels, not ghosts, not human, but they are still here. And what cannot die, waits. So the next time you find yourself deep in the hills of Kentucky, where fog rolls in like a shroud and silence feels too heavy, remember Pine Hollow, the town that time forgot, but that never forgets those who visit. Rebecca and Rachel are still there, waiting, watching, and listening for the next soul who dares to knock on their door. If this tale chilled you to the bone, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon. Because here at HR Stories, the past is never really gone, and the truth is often far stranger than fiction.